Copper is often referred to as Dr. Copper, and it's can be seen as a barometer for the health of the global economy. It had a good start in 2021, but given it's been sideways since then, what could that mean for the performance of copper in 2022? And could there be a trade down here? In this video, we'll look at the pros and cons and see if there's an opportunity to be set up going into next year. Hello, I'm David Jones from Capital.com, and I thought we'd do an outlook for 2022 for copper. We haven't looked at copper that much this year, and I think it has been fairly uneventful since about May. In May, it did hit fresh all-time highs, but since then, we've just seen the price trading in a range. So I thought, well, let's take a look at it. Let's look at some of the forecasts for copper next year, what could change, and where the trade might be. So as usual, in this video, I'll talk about some of that. Then we'll jump back onto the platform and take a look at the trends in copper and the big levels to watch and see if we can get a trade on. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, if you could click on subscribe, it does help support the channel. It means we can continue to push out lots of different content on the various markets that we cover, and you get updated whenever we put up new content for a different market. Right, let's get into it and take a look at copper in a bit more detail. So copper is seen as a barometer for the wider economy. It's got widespread applications, in all areas of industry, whether it's electronics and power generation, for example, to name but two. So if we see demand for copper pick up, some historically would view that as a leading indicator that the economy is expanding. If we see demand contract, it can suggest that perhaps the economy is slowing down. So overall, over the decades, it has sat as this leading economic indicator for economic growth. So looking at the numbers today, if we looked at just the raw numbers, it's good. If we look at the performance of copper in 2021 year to date, it's up about 20%, which is a great performance. Given normal benchmarks, 20% growth in a year is a good return. But so much of that was done in the first 5 months or so of the year, because over the last 6 or 7 months, the price of copper has been mainly sideways. So we saw a really strong start to the first half of the year for copper, and then nothing really since then. So what are the things to watch out for in 2022? Well, clearly, if it's seen as a leading indicator for the economy, if we did see the global economy start to slow down because of, let's say, coronavirus, we've seen the impacts the latest variant Omicron has had, or the way it spooked investors, at least. If we saw, a slowdown in the economy, that would affect demand for copper and could weigh on the price. But of course, there's a supply-demand balance here that we need to think about. And some analysts also think that in 2022, we'll see a surplus of supply. This year, apparently, there was a deficit in supply. If we see supply pick up in 2022, and then on the other side of the balance, we see demand slow down, that is something that could weigh on the price. So as ever, there are arguments for both being bullish or bearish going into next year. When it comes to forecasts, wide range of forecasts from investment banks and analysis companies for 2022. On the low side, forecasts range from around about the low $4, about $4.25, not a million miles from where it's trading now, to Goldman Sachs, pretty bullish. They're saying copper about $5.40 by the end of 2022, which again would be all-time highs for copper, and quite a move from where it's trading now. But with these wide forecasts, I think it's difficult to try and come up with a sensible outlook because so much is still unknown. But what we're going to do, we'll jump on the charts, take a look at the trends, and see where there could be a trade for copper in 2022. It's taken a bit of a knock over the last couple of days. Is this a buying opportunity, or actually is this start of a deeper sell-off? Let's talk about the big levels to watch, then we'll jump on the platform. So for me, on the upside, there are some barriers we've seen over the last 6 months. The big one, the first big one for me, October highs around $4.78. After that, we have the May high coming in at $4.90, that multi-decade all-time high. And then after that, $5 as a psychological level. On the downside, lots of support, starting right from the lowest point for the year, $3.48 up to $3.96, which was the low in August. But as usual, to put some color on these numbers, let's take a look at the charts. So let's take a look at this longer term chart for copper first of all, just to put it in perspective. We've got data going back to the late 90s here. So you can see just how high it's been this year. So in 2021, trading up near $4.90. So taking out the old highs around $4.60 from 10 years ago in 2011. So, we are at, or we have been at, historically high levels for copper, just to put it into perspective. What we did see, if we go back to 2008, not surprisingly, after the financial crisis, big hit to the world economy, we saw the price of copper hit really hard. But let's zoom in on this move since 2020 and take a look at things in a bit more detail. So here's the trend off the March 2020 lows when the price of copper traded down to around 2. So considering where we're trading now, just below $4.20, we've seen more than 100% move even to where we are now for the price of copper. And it was this trend that did really well, all the way into August of this year. This trend line did a great job. But since then, it's not been the most interesting of markets. From a trend following point of view, we've seen some sort of just sideways range trading by the price. It did look in October as if it was going to get a move on again and challenge those old all-time highs, but it hasn't turned out to be the case at all. Taking a look at the RSI down here, not much interesting going on from an RSI perspective. The last time it was really oversold was down in August when we saw the price briefly dip below $4. And we haven't really traded into oversold on the 10-day RSI since then. It's come close a few times and it's close again now, but overall not oversold for a few months now. So we're going into 2022. Where do we think it's going to go? Well, I think for me, even though that trend line it's fallen out of that trend line in the summer of this year. As I often say, just because something's fallen out of a trend line doesn't mean necessarily that the trend is going to start going the other way. Perhaps the previous trend continues, but at a slower rate, or perhaps the market just trades in a sideways range. If we zoom things in, the big levels for me to watch immediately going into 2022 are really the lows we've seen probably over the last 9 months or so, starting from down here. So the March low down at 393, I think could be a big level to watch. So for me, if it starts trading below 390, so about 10% below where we are now, I think then we are in a downtrend and we can start being much more bearish for the price of copper. But before that, we can see what an important level sort of 395 to 4 has been, and then 410 in more recent months. So I'd still be inclined to be a buyer on dips. I don't think we're going to see the same runaway market in 2022 that we saw in the first 5 months of 2021. So for me, perhaps the best we can hope for is something of a rangy market. Perhaps if we have some positive economic shocks, we could see the old highs from October tested around 470, 480. But for me, it's perhaps a buy on weakness, sell on strength sort of market going into 2022. So for me, the levels to watch, weakness towards $4. So what I might do in terms of a trade here is actually put a trade into buy if we dip back into the zone it was in sort of September of this year. So I'm going to leave an order to buy at $4.05. So about 13, 14 cents below where we're trading now. And I'll give the market a bit of room and go perhaps an aggressive stop loss would be the other side of $3.95. I'll give it a bit more room and go in at 380. So I'm going to put an order into buy at 405, stops at 380, and just see if in the first few months of next year the price starts to turn around and we get a recovery. Let's just set that trade up. So I'm ready to go. The price at the moment is trading at $4.19, which is the lowest it's been for a couple of months or so. Copper. I'm going to put an order into buy at 405. So I think the price might be under a bit more weakness, a bit more pressure from here. If that order gets filled, put a stop loss. and my stop is going in at 380. And you can see that's really the other side of this sideways range we've been in for some time now. I think if we trade down to there, we could see the start of a bigger sell-off. And the risk is the usual £254 or so. So that's it. So that order is going to sit there. Let's just send the order through. So the order will sit there at 405. If the market weakens from here, the order will get filled. So, I think really perhaps a boring start to 2022 for me. Still a buyer of weakness. If it starts trading below that March low, I'd be more bearish for the price of copper. It has fallen out of that uptrend. I'm not expecting fantastic gains, but perhaps if it gets put under a bit of more pressure from here, we'll see something of a snapback into the new year. That's it for this outlook for copper in 2022. So arguably, broadly still moderately bullish, but really watching some of those most recent supports. If we start to break below there, then I think that the fortunes for copper could well be different. We'll do updates throughout the year, see how it progresses. But for now, from me, David Jones and Capital.com, we'll leave things there. Good luck with your trading. For more trading videos just like this, please subscribe to our channel.